Hey, everybody, I'm Tommy, and you are on the Love Boat. You could probably tell that because of my kindness. This is a kinder and gentler Tommy. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We have Kristen Melinda. We have Susie, Kevin Hawthorne in Lakeland, Florida. There you are, my brother. Jane Aldrich, good to see you. Brock Bandy, the man is a legend. Barbara Aldrich is here. Let's see. What else have we got? Who else have we got? Just Joan, good to see you. So when I started this channel, I started off talking about sobriety and nothing but, and it is a subject matter that will get you in deep trouble on YouTube. I can't say certain words without being demonetized, especially if I say them in the first couple of minutes. And this is a very difficult thing because in this particular genre, I'm going to talk about cocaine and heroin. I'm going to talk about fentanyl. So I've been demonetized because I said that within the first 5 minutes, but I'm not censoring my speech anymore. And then what started to happen is I branched into true crime, which was fairly logical because of the fact that I've done a decent amount of time in court and in prison. Sorry. So I started to get into these things. And what happens is people then want to collaborate with you. And that's how channels get a lot bigger, is when you start doing collabs. YouTube seems to think that what I'm doing is coming out and telling people that they should do drugs as opposed to them not doing drugs. So I branched into true crime, and I'll be honest, it was a genre that kind of made me uncomfortable because the level of competition is incredible. And anytime you have a lot of competition in anything, you also get a lot of backstabbing and a lot of backbiting and stuff that I don't want to deal with if this is what I'm doing for a gig. Lisa Trimble, good to see you. Pepperhead, what's happening? So what I'm left is I can go back and I can talk about sobriety, and I feel very passionate about that. Then the Charlie Kirk thing happened. And you probably noticed a less kind Tommy Scoville. Hey, Allie Harvey, good to have you here. I became a less kind Tommy, according to some people. The reason that this happened is because we're tribal by nature, right? Human beings are tribal by nature. This has been studied ad nauseum. Hey, Mike, good to see you. B-Lady, what's happening? And the problem becomes I absolutely felt part of the Charlie Kirk tribe. This was a man who was talking about things that are logical. Let me tell you something real quick, and I'm not going to raise my voice or get ugly, I promise. I can't promise. But I'm going to try not to. Kinder, gentler, Tommy. Recently, the Pediatric Association of America, these are all the doctors, have decided that they're going to change the names that we call kids' genitalia. Because penis and vagina obviously is just way too complex. Relatable Reese, there you are. Good to see you. Hope you're enjoying your time off. Beautiful concept. Say again? The Johnny Scoville says hello, Reese. Tommy Bird, good to see you. So they would like to change the names of certain things, like breasts will no longer be those. They'll be called breasticles, as if maybe you've got a set of raisins on your chest. Not sweater muffins. I suggested that, but they didn't go with it. Then they want to call the genitalia either an innie or an outie. I'm not kidding. And a lot of other names of body parts, which I would feel uncomfortable even telling you. How about we'll do this one just to give you an idea of the rabbit hole that this is going to go down. Yes, you can email me Diddy's letter to the judge. Oh, I'm very serious, Jane. They would like to call a woman's vagina the front hole. I'm not playing. And if you go, why is this? Well, because if you were to cut a penis and tuck it up inside somebody, well, then they would have a front hole, right? They wouldn't be female and it wouldn't be a vagina. If this is an uncomfortable conversation, I'm really glad, because these kind of conversations should probably happen, right? Innie and outies is a belly button. Well, it used to be. But this is what we called in the book 1984 Newspeak. And it's a stupid name. You should hear what they call the button, folks. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, front or back. Sweater muffins, never heard that. We'll see. You learn something new every day on the Love Boat. Totally ridiculous, says Mike Bragg. Well, it was one of those things that there was a man out there that was railing against this, and he was doing it without raising his voice. And after he was murdered, for speaking truth to idiocy, and I'm sorry, that's what was happening. After he was murdered for this, those of us who agreed with him 100% and kind of viewed him as our mouthpiece started to feel guilty, right? That we didn't say something and we didn't step up. And I've explained this. And we've had some people reach out to us and say things like, aren't you Christians? Shouldn't you be more Christ-like? And before anyone ever reached out to that and said that, I had come on here and said, I don't say I am Charlie Kirk, right? You heard a lot of people. That was the #1 trending hashtag on the planet recently, right after his death. A lot of people, and it's changed a lot of people and the content they do. It's gotten kind of incredible how many people are stepping up. These aren't people changing beliefs. I mean, some are. The vast majority are people that just believed this way and now have the courage to say it. I'm not Charlie Kirk. I'm a guy that spent a decent amount of time in prison, and I was addicted to heroin for 30 years. I've done things to get heroin. I've robbed banks. I've sold guns. I did a lot of really bad things in my life. I haven't in a long time. But you don't design a perfect country, right? That's why in the preamble of the Constitution, it says, we the people in order to form a more perfect union. Not a perfect union, because if it was perfect, you would stop, right? And then things would start to disintegrate. So we're always in theory trying to be more perfect. And that was what the design of the founding fathers was. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? It really does. I'm not sure whether or not we're pulling that off, right? They should have taken a survey. I prefer boobies myself. Just Joan, I could have rocked with boobies. I'm a huge fan of boobies. I mean, as a word, I just like them. But I'm one of those cis, boring heterosexual guys that people now hate. Diddy said he has been drug-free in jail, even though it is all around. Yeah, he's a liar. He's absolutely a liar. Pepperhead says we all do bad things. Yeah, we do. Here's the deal. I'm not doing bad things. I'm saying things that may not come across loving. I am striving every day to be more Christ-like. I'll drop a few people, but that's actually what I'm doing. Am I living up to it with my rhetoric? I don't know. But I also do wholeheartedly believe that there is a time for everything. There's a time for every season. And there's a time to be born. There's a time to die. This is Ecclesiastes. And you've probably heard Johnny say this. I also know enough about scripture to realize that when translated from the original in Latin or in Aramaic, the 10 Commandments doesn't say thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder. And that is a very different thing, right? We anglicized it, which I think was a mistake. There is a time to kill. I'm not suggesting anybody does it right now. I bring that up because killing Charlie Kirk was murder, wasn't killing. You kill someone to silence their speech, that's murder. You kill someone that comes in to hurt your kid, that's killing them, right? And in my opinion, if you do it like with a shot to the head, it's a mercy killing. Someone comes in to get my family, I might take a couple of weeks to rub them out. I'm sorry, not a good person. I'm trying. Kerry, good to see you. I like to refer to mine as Big Jim and the Twins. Gotta love that.
Sweet reference.
Sweet reference. Really sweet reference. Yeah, interesting murder versus kill. There are times where we need to do things. The founding fathers said that the tree of freedom is watered by the blood of patriots. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's not a fun sentence, but it's a damn truth. I'm not suggesting anything violent to anybody. I'm suggesting that we start using words the way that Charlie Kirk did, because if enough people do it, then they don't look at him and go, that's some kind of right-wing weirdo. Because when you really start taking the temperature of our country, you're going to find out that a lot more people believed what he believes than otherwise. Now, maybe not everything that he believes. And I will challenge anybody that happens to read the same book that I read, because you can't pick one from column A and one from column B. I did that for my entire life. I used to say, all green things were put on this planet for man's use. That was probably the first thing that I ever memorized out of the Bible so that I could justify my smoking pot. However, if you continue to read, it says things about sobriety and about what happens when you start to take substances into your body. It makes more reference to drink than anything else, but not controlling things is an issue. And I didn't have control over substances, which is one of the reasons that I no longer do it. I am striving to be a better person. I'm not gonna allow BS. I'm not gonna let somebody tell young girls who are 8 or 9 years old that they're getting ready to develop chesticles. That's called lunacy. And you have to start asking yourself, why would doctors, right, who know more about anatomy than anybody in the world do this? And the answer is pretty simple, because we now live in a society where it's cool for every single person to develop their own morality. You think there's a problem with that? People reach out to me and say, I agree with what you say often, but I believe everybody should have a right to decide what's right or wrong. Ted Bundy believed that too. Thought right was killing 38 girls who looked like his first girlfriend. It's an extreme example, right? You have to use extreme examples because we don't have critical thinkers left on planet Earth. We have people that listen to 30-second sound bites. You want me to be nice about that? It's going to be a stretch. I'm going to work on not cursing. I'm going to work on, hey, David, good to see you. I'm going to work on being a better example because I am a representation of people. The man had mental issues, didn't he? Are you referring to Charlie Kirk or the man that, which one are we talking about? I'm not sure exactly who you're referring to, B-Lady. I have mental issues. If you're talking about me, I do. In fact, I have several. Almost everybody on the boat does. Bundy. Here's the thing with Bundy. And this is, I think, a really important point. There is a group of people on planet Earth that believe that there's no such thing as an evil human being. So Ted Bundy cutting off a woman's head, going back to visit it after the fact, and then bringing it home so that he could do things to it isn't evil, because evil doesn't exist in that sense of the word. What he did was wrong, but he's not an evil person. My answer to those people would be spend 13 years in prison. Meet some guys who have been taken out of an environment where they can go out and do those things. They're still evil. I promise you. And when you look into their eyes, it's like looking at a shark. There's nothing looking back at you. It's an empty void. Drew Peterson is one of the greatest examples of that ever. I worked with that guy for 40 hours a week for a year and a half, 2 years, and he was evil in the truest sense of the word. This is the cop from Illinois that disappeared one wife and killed another one. And there was a big rumor going around for a really long time that he had put her in a blue barrel. In fact, they had police and cadaver dogs and helicopters looking all over these certain areas, especially near waterways. Well, they delivered a bunch of stuff for our dishwashing equipment inside the prison. And they delivered it in very large barrels. And he went and put a sticker up on the outside of the barrel that said, "Don't bother looking, she's not in this one." Classy. That's evil. The people that tweeted, "Ha ha, now Charlie's kids don't have a father," I assure you, that's not a good person that chose to do something evil. People that abuse kids and animals are not human beings. They're not. They're evil to the core. And I'm not going to let the absolute morons that walk around this planet and say things like, everybody needs to be treated with a level of respect. Child molesters don't need to be treated with a level of respect. I'm sorry. I'm not going to call them minor attracted people. I'm not going to call people that are into bestiality, right, zoophiles. You're not going to take over my language. And if that makes me hateful, you can tattoo it on my forehead. There will never be a time that I'm on planet Earth where I'm not going to speak truth to people that aren't messing the planet up. I did a show the other night on Portland, Oregon, and the amount of hate that I got out of it, people said, that's only one part of the city that believes that there's a siege going on there. So do a little research, and they show people driving down the street. This is no slant. This is not a Republican or a Democrat. It's a guy in a car driving up and down the street just filming. And do you know what you see? You see placards in windows that says, "Please don't break my windows. We agree." Portland ICE director says city politics stopped police from protecting the facility, but only since June 14th. In the videos that I watched, I saw people beat with sticks. Now, granted, these guys, I told Johnny Scoble, I'd let that guy beat me with a stick for 40 hours a week for $25 an hour. Now, he wasn't hurting anybody. But the idea is that you're hitting someone with a stick, right? Whether or not it's supremely violent, it still rises to the level of what they call felony assault. I find it funny that the people of Oregon can do whatever they want and not go to prison, especially since I went to prison and I did the time for the stuff that I did illegally. What's going on in Portland is the takeover of a city. And you know what? You want to call me hateful? They should eliminate those people. You can do that a couple of different ways. One of them, you can incarcerate them and put them in prison. That would be the humane thing to do. But if they want to continue to do this, I don't know if you guys have heard of a song called "4 Dead in Ohio." Vietnam protesters at Kent State. They got shot. These things happen. It's awful. One of the parents of the kid that got shot was asked by the press what happened. And you know what he said? He said, revolutionaries die. It's what they do. And while I mourn the loss of my child, I have absolutely no animosity to the gentleman that shot him. It's uncomfortable, right? But you know why he said that? Because revolution is not legal in the United States of America. What's happening with Antifa in Portland is revolution. And if you go, oh, come on, Tommy, read their doctrine. Read what they're attempting. They want anarchy. Do you know what that is? Anarchy is by definition, no laws. Do you have any idea what I would have done to your country if there were no laws? Try living in a place that there are no laws. I spent 13 years in a place like that. You'd love it. I promise you, you'd have a really good freaking time. And I don't care if you're a stone cold killer. They don't have good times in there either. Portland will spread. I promise you it will. And not because Antifa is so powerful, but because you know what, smokers like George Soros and his lovely son have donated $80 million to organizations like this. People go, how dare the president declare these people a terrorist organization? Oh, I don't know. They've said they'd like to overthrow the government. I think by definition, that is a mother-loving terrorist organization. The next step in logic would be to ask George Soros why he donated $80 million to terrorists. Maybe he ought to be doing time. I don't imagine he'd get more in about 4 or 5 months. I mean, he's got to be 180 at this point, but he's holding on like some kind of gargoyle in a freaking movie. Honestly, could that guy just move on? And if you think I'm being cold-hearted, maybe you'd like to research him. He's Jewish. He said the most fun he ever had in his life was hunting Jews down in World War II with his father. Think I'm making that up? Google it. Don't listen to sound bites from people on the left telling you there's nothing wrong with George Soros just because he wants to support left-wing causes. He made all of his money by destabilizing currencies. You don't do that any other way than fomenting unrest. He was never happier than during the Black Lives Matter. Those riots were great to destabilize a currency. You see people from all around the world watch what's going on and the dollar drops. And if you guys happen to be people that look at stuff like this, maybe you want to look and see what Bitcoin has been doing in the last couple of days. Because when the world sees Portland the way it is, they go, America's losing it. And that's what the George Soroses of this planet want. I think it's amazing that when Antifa shows up, they've all got bottles full of some kind of pee or bleach or something to throw on the cops and pallets of bricks. You think these people are out there buying that stuff? No, it's getting dropped off by people that want to destabilize the United States of America because it is absolutely advantageous to what their goals are. So you want me to be a kinder and gentler Tommy? With all due respect, you might want to find a different Tommy. I think it will be easier. I'm going to go out of my way to not curse because I have a damn good vocabulary. And when I curse, it's because I'm being lazy. And it's not a great representation of the things that I believe in. I will give you that. I began stacking silver at 18 an ounce. Now it's 47. And 47 is huge for silver. Silver, however, should be at about $300 an ounce. Here's the thing about silver, if you do a little research. Hopefully you're taking possession of actual silver. But most people who buy silver don't take possession of it. They're buying paper that says they have silver. And they're selling a hell of a lot more of that paper than there is silver in the United States. But it's an interesting point that you just brought up. If you want to do some research, throughout history, anytime a society is paying their soldiers more than the value of 1 ounce of silver a day, the society is about to collapse. It means that the economy has gotten out of control, right? They're printing more money than they should. That's usually what causes that. I promise you, nobody in the military is making $47 a day or less. And right now, silver's at an all-time high because nobody has any faith left in the dollar. And you know what? No disrespect. They shouldn't. The dollar is backed by nothing. It's not even owned by the United States of America. Put it too in the chat if you knew that. But we don't own our own currency. We rent it. We rent it. Can you imagine this as a concept? How do I get into the business of renting somebody money? And I don't mean loaning it, because that's a completely different thing. I understand the concept of loaning somebody money and saying 2% you're going to get back to me, right? No, the money is owned by somebody else. They allow us to use it. Do you know that our currency is not the only one they're renting to people. People say, what happened to John F. Kennedy is just awful. He made a speech where he said, we need to go off this and go back on the gold standard. That's a death sentence. And I can prove it to you. Does anybody remember an attack that happened back in 1986, if I'm not mistaken? If I'm off, I'm not off by much. It was a terrorist attack on an airplane that was on its way to Lockerbie, Scotland. It was a TWA flight. TWA is no longer with us, but it blew up. And there were Americans on that plane, some of them children that were on a field trip kind of thing. Nobody survived the Lockerbie, Scotland attack. And it came out that Muammar Gaddafi had 1988. Muammar Gaddafi bankrolled it. And everybody sort of heard that this is what happened. So we bombed them in one of the longest bombing runs in history because certain countries said, we're not going to let you fly over our airspace to go bomb them. Friends of ours, allies of ours, because the best oil on the planet comes out of his ground, right? They call it sweet crude. It doesn't need to go through the refining process like crappy crude. Sweet crude, you can turn into gasoline, really easy, huge profit margins. So we bombed him. And he didn't live in a house, he lived in a tent. Now, don't think pup tent. Think 5,000 square feet of beautiful oriental carpets and scimitars and things hanging on the wall, gold all over the place. But he lived there with his wife and his kid. They didn't get him. They did, however, kill his family. And the president at the time came out and said, we're really sorry that happened. That's not who we were going after, but we're going to keep going after him until we get him because of what he did. And he was smart enough to reach out and go, is there anything I can do to make that not happen? So they said, yeah, give up your nukes, which is kind of a big thing to ask a country, right? Give up your nuclear weapons. Poor Gaddafi, I liked him, but he was going to do what the U.S. didn't want him to. Gaddafi became a model citizen. He got out of the framework and stopped doing the terrorist stuff. After losing family, he said, that's a wrap. I'm not doing this anymore, right? So why did he die? He died because he wanted to make a speech at the United Nations, which he hadn't been able to do since the Lockerbie bombing. In his speech, you know what he said? I'm going to back up my currency with crude oil. We're going to go off the money that we're using now and we're going to back it with crude oil. Every single dollar will have $1's worth of crude in a reserve. The United States should do that with wheat, he said. Because of the amount of money that the United States produces just through their wheat crop, you could have wheat-backed dollars that would be worth something. When that sentence came out of his mouth, the clock was ticking for how long he was going to be on Earth. He ended up in a refrigerator to 7-Eleven. I'm not making this up. They went in there and killed a man who had literally done everything that the United States asked him to do, right? And we were going to protect him. You give up the nukes, we're not going to let anything happen to you. If the United States promises that they're going to protect you, you should run as fast as possible, maybe get some hair dye, change your name, because we're not really good at that. We're really good at promising people that we're going to take care of them, but we will crab back on them and stab them in the back. I'm sorry, it's the truth. And you know what we're great at? Burying it, right? You have to do freedom of information FOIA requests 50 years later to find out what happened to Amelia Earhart. What are you, woofing me? You think we know what happened to Kennedy? Because it's going to be a hell of a long time before we find out what happened with Epstein, because that didn't go down the way that it did. And the question then becomes, what did go down the way that we thought it did? Did 9/11? Did what happened in Oklahoma? Because I'll tell you what, for a really long time, people have been saying to me, you know what, you're a conspiracy theorist. You believe every single, no, I believe nothing that the government tells me because they got priors, right? The people that are telling me that, hey, maybe some people really did land, right? Maybe we really had something land at Roswell, New Mexico. And they go, you're crazy, right? That's nuts. But there's a great book you should get. It's called Don't Know Much About History. If you've never read this book, you absolutely need to. Right? Don't know much about history. In that book, they come clean on some stuff. One of which is this. We knew they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. I don't know if you've ever been out there, ever been to Hawaii, but they take you out on this little landing and there's this thing that you can walk on that's like plexiglass so that you can see down below. And what you see is the Arizona. It's one of the boats that was bombed while sitting in the harbor. We didn't say, well, we'll let them bomb the harbor, but let's pull all of the soldiers out and save their lives. No, they were afraid if we pulled all the soldiers out that people might realize that we were on to them. So our country let our guys get killed because it was going to get us into World War II. This is not a debate anymore. These are facts. Didn't they let the bombing of Pearl Harbor happen to enter the war? They did. And you know what? We can say it was a great decision, wasn't it? I mean, we stopped Adolf Hitler. If that didn't happen, maybe we wouldn't have joined the war. That sounds a lot like the by any means necessary, doesn't it? That the ends justify the means. Because if you get to a point where you say, well, 3,000 or so soldiers, you're going to lose way more than that in the war. So what difference does it make, right? They would be going over to fight anyway. Isn't it kind of worth that? Well, that thought process also says, if there's 1,000 girls that get abused by this guy Epstein, but if he's using that to trap politicians so that we can get the things done, that by any means necessary thing is the most evil statement ever. It's also printed over the door at the Mossad building, the training center for the Mossad in Israel. And there are a lot of people that think that Israel might be running our country now. And I'm not anti-Semitic. I love Jewish people. I love the culture. I love the food, right? The Bible says we're supposed to protect the Israeli people. It does. It's biblical. The government is a hell of a lot different, right? The Israeli government and the Jewish people are two completely separate entities. I love the people of the United States of America. I would trust a guy selling dope in prison on the front more than I would trust the White House, no matter who's sitting in it. Because I no longer live in a world where I believe the president runs the White House. I think they get elected and people come in and go, yeah, you don't run jack. And you go, well, how would that happen? I don't know. Let's think of this. Maybe if you don't own your money, right? Maybe if you don't own your cash that everybody in your country spends money on. So what happens when things start going bad? You got to go to the people that rent you your money. Okay, you're not in control. If you don't have your own currency, you're not in control. We like to say that nations are built on a few things, right? Culture, borders, and language. If that bums you out, that usually is what defined the country. You had a secure border so that people couldn't come at you. And I'm talking about going back to as far back as you could want to go. Because if you remove that border, you can get invaded without people invading you. I saw a great clip of film that came out of Australia today. Love the people of Australia. Got a lot of Australians that watch The Love Boat. And I have a lot of love for Australia. I've been there twice. It's a great place. The problem becomes that in this video, they're showing a guy at a rally. He's a Muslim cat. And he said over a speaker into a microphone, every person, man and woman and child in this country will be Muslim. Not for nothing, but if you come into my country and say you're going to change the entire country, I'm going to lose my mind. I am. And people like to talk about how the whites dominate the world because they're such rotten. We're about 12.5 or something percent of the planet. When the entire world starts hating 12% of the planet, you can ask the people at Auschwitz how that worked out. Or Dachau, right? Or Birkenau. Because when people start talking about how one race causes all of the problems on planet Earth, trust and believe your skin color is going to get you killed. I said 2 years ago, I started talking about this. I said, we're pulling a bowstring and we're pulling it too far. And what's going to happen is when it snaps back, you're not going to get regular conservatives. You're going to get lunatic fringe, right? That's what happens. Now, because of everything that happened with the Charlie Kirk assassination, we have algorithms that are screwed. It's getting real hard for the algorithms to bury this story. And Charlie had thousands of videos out there. Do you know how many people are taking Charlie's videos and just redoing them and doing commentary over them because it's selling? That becomes an issue because the people that talk about it louder and uglier get more views. This isn't a healthy situation we're in. It's a very unhealthy situation that we're in. Now, the good news is that while this is going on, we've got an attack group off of the coast of Venezuela shooting missiles at boats and blowing them up. Now, I don't want dope coming into our country. In fact, I want dope coming into our country probably less than anybody on earth. It means an awful lot to me. This is a subject matter that I am very uncomfortable with. So am I bummed out they're taking out boats? I'm not. But allegedly, they did this without even asking for permission, right? Anybody know how easy it is to accidentally kill the wrong person and start a war? And if you go, I think one of the world wars started that way, I believe that's BS. I believe if you research that, you're going to find out it was a lot like Pearl Harbor. I'll get demonetized again. Who cares? They call them false flags. There are people that believe that 9/11 was one. There are people that believe that what happened at Oklahoma City was one. I would suggest that you research the crap out of both of those, right? Do you know that we had run military drills on what might happen if somebody grabbed a plane and tried to fly it into the World Trade Centers or any other buildings? 12 years before it happened. That doesn't mean that we were aware that it was coming. I don't know if we were or not. I don't. But there's a lot about that doesn't smell right. You know, there really is. There's a lot about everything that they tell us that doesn't smell right. I thought I knew the Iran-Contra affair. I believed everything that I was told. And then I got old enough to start this critical thinking process. Let me help you out with what this means, this critical thinking process. You've heard me go off on a guy named Wes Watson. He's one of those fake alpha males that drives, exotic cars and says the word mother effer in every sentence and sells money. Sells training kits for money. He basically talks about how you can make your life better, but he makes you pay $4,000 to do it. And then when you pay the $4,000, he says, you can do exactly what I do. Just sell coaching the way I'm doing it. It's like saying to somebody, mail me a $5 bill and I'll tell you how to get rich. You get the $5 bill and mail something back and go, do what I just did. If you get 400 or 500 people mailing you $500, you'll be in good shape. $5 bills will start stacking up. It's absolutely ridiculous. Why do I bring this guy up? Right? Critical thinking. I watched some of the early videos that people said, watch his early stuff. He was a great dude. He talked about sobriety. One of the first videos I was watching with Johnny Scoville. And he said, when I was 13, right, I was already making about $100,000 a year or whatever selling dope. He started at 11, apparently. And he said by the time he was 14, he had already bought his first Range Rover. No. Yeah. Range Rover is both. Bought a Range Rover that was supercharged. He also bought a Z71 pickup, $50,000, jacked up. So I thought to myself, critical thinking, what did a Z71 pickup cost in that year? Turns out it was $22,000. So jacking that thing up must have cost him $33,000 because people usually spend more money putting a suspension on a truck than they do paying for it. And that supercharged Range Rover, well, it didn't come out for another 11 years. Range Rover didn't supercharge a car until this guy was already in prison. Critical thinking. You hear somebody say something and you go, I don't know. It doesn't sound right. He said he was rolling a joint in a parking lot, right? Big blunts. And the guy came up and knocked on the window and he pulled a pistol up and stuck it in the face. And the guy interviewing him said, you pulled a pistol out in the parking lot of a school? And he goes, yeah, but this was years before anybody was even worried about that kind of stuff, man. This was in the gangster days. Actually, it was about 1 year after Columbine. There had never been a time on planet Earth where schools were more freaked out than that first year after Columbine. But once again, critical thinking. Take the time to listen to what somebody says and then go look it up. I'll be a lot calmer if the people who say to me, well, I don't agree with you and here's why. Everybody should be able to decide how they want to live. Do me a favor and critical think that statement out. Everybody should be allowed to live the way they want to. So what if your sick neighbor wants to live raping cats? Well, he's a zoophile. That's how he was born. That doesn't make him a bad person. No, it makes him a freak, right? A freak that needs to be incarcerated for the rest of his time on planet Earth. Neighbor on the other side, maybe they like kids. You can't blame them. I was born liking women, right? These are minor attracted people. No, they're sick bastards. That's what they are. For real. There's a cure for that. It's about 178 grains of lead. I have no patience. What's that? One to the dome. Just, double tap a chest and one in the head without feeling bad for a moment. And we lived in a time where people used to talk like that. I don't know if you remember the show that they used to do to raise money for homeless people, Comic Relief. Dennis Miller got up on stage to do his monologue. And he said about 3 minutes before he did it, they came out and they told a story that was horrific. They found this girl that had been basically kept in a cage like a dog until she was about 13, abused the entire time. They arrested the family, went through all of this. And he came out and he said, I was going to come out here and do comedy, but this is killing me. He said, I just read this story, so let me do a little public service. If you wake up tomorrow morning and you find yourself attracted to a kid, lean in and take one for the team, right? Do away with yourself. Made people fun. A lot of people really dig that, right? That's not fair. Those people were born that way. Is it fair to the kid? We have to stop believing that it's okay for people to do whatever they want because, hey, if they disagree with me, they should be able to do what they want. I can do what I want. That's anarchy. Go check out Portland. Old people don't leave their houses, right? They hold signs up that say, I'm not against you. I'm on your side. Please don't break my windows. And the person running the state and the city say, this is how the people want to live. BS. This is how the freaks that imported to that city to do their protesting, who are hanging out in front of a federal building, stopping vehicles from going into a federal building, that's how they want to live. I remember what Portland used to look like. Right? It was a beautiful city, man. It was, in fact, it was a gem of a city. Where the hell did Dennis Miller go? Right wing, right of the Birchers. For real. He stopped caring what people thought about him. He had made enough money.
9/11 did that.
Yeah, 9/11 was his turning point. But he was in Hollywood listening to lefties say, whatever you do, don't tell anybody you voted for Reagan. You'll never get another job. And you do that for a while and you do that for a while. And then you find yourself saying, you know what? This doesn't feel good. I'm not a huge fan of saying grape or sexual assault.
People are waking up though.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that. That was fun. It's called lead poisoning. That's right. You know what? I had a friend who was a gangster. Good dude. And one day we were having a conversation, and it was about a mutual friend. And I said, I haven't seen him in probably 8 or 9 months. He said, oh, no, he passed away. And the guy was young. I said, how did he die? He said, natural causes. I said, you kidding? What was he, 40 something? He goes, yeah. I said, what was it, cancer? And he goes, no, I got shot in the forehead. And I said, that's natural causes? He goes, if you do what he does for a living, it is. We need to get back to a world where people that touch kids need to be very, very afraid. People that make the stuff that the freaks look at online, that should be a life sentence. That should be a life sentence. People go, well, they just looked because they were curious. Yeah, I don't read Road and Track magazine because I don't intend to buy a car, right? I don't buy Motorcycle magazine because I actually like trucks. The people that are looking at images of little kids are causing those images to be made. This is simple supply and demand. If everybody on planet Earth tomorrow just went, I'm not buying fentanyl ever again, then they can keep making it until the end of time, but they ain't gonna be able to move it. Criminals are realizing now how much more money there is in the most foul things on planet Earth, right? The amount of money that they can make hurting children. If you want to sell drugs, you have to buy drugs. You have to smuggle drugs. We were so kind, right, that we let people come across our borders carrying kids that didn't belong to them. Because it's a great hustle if you got a kid with you. They're much less likely to turn you away. But if you don't have a kid, well, maybe you kidnap them or you buy them. And then when you get to the United States, you can sell them. And I don't mean to a loving family that wants to raise them. So you want me to be a kindler and gentler Tommy? Send your email to somebody else. With all due respect. Do I sound kinder to you right now? Do I sound more gentle? Because I am. But till the day I die, I'm going to be one of those guys where if I come outside and a guy just kicked a dog, I'm going to fight him. If people want to hurt people that they simply can pick on because they're bigger or stronger or tougher. So that would be women, children, and animals. If a guy wants to do that, I'm going to be the dude to hit him. And if it puts me in prison, I'm cool with that. So if I lose subs, I promise you that hurts a hell of a lot less than going to prison. But I would love for somebody to tell me why I'm wrong. I would love for somebody to tell me why the thought process, and this is what you all send to me in your emails, all of you. Hey, I don't agree with everything you say. I love you, but I feel like everybody should be able to decide their own morality. Oh my God. Critical think this. There has to be a morality. You don't have to agree with it. I don't think drugs ought to be illegal. I don't. Plain and simple. The prohibition of drugs has killed more people than every war we've ever been in by a damn stretch. We created a black market that destroyed not only America, but Mexico and half of Latin America. You think that they're making cocaine for any place else? The vast majority of all of the drugs that get produced come to the United States of America because we are the biggest consumers of drugs, right? If we weren't, Mexico wouldn't look like it does. It wouldn't be run by cartels. Those cartels are in business because we made drugs illegal. And when you make something illegal, it creates a black market. And pot that you could get for $15 a pound was eventually worth $2,500 for brick weed a pound. Boston, Massachusetts. I made a living selling brick pot there, getting it in Texas and moving it there. $2,500 a pound. I bought it for $400. When you create that kind of a imbalance, that kind of a market, people from good families, I have a good family. But that lure of easy money is the same reason people run across the border. Should we be pissed at them for that? We created the problem. If you're going to do that, make the border impossible to get through. Right? Protect your citizenry. Instead, smugglers went from charging $30,000, right, under Trump to $3,000 under Biden. I talked to people down here, people that literally paid this.
I was there.
Because we were being humane, okay? We're being humane. Just like when we say to somebody, and this pisses people off, I'm sorry, not sorry. But it's humane to say to an 8-year-old, if you think you're in the wrong body, that's okay. When I was 8, I wanted to be Batman, right?
You still want to be Batman.
Don't tell people that. I do kind of still want to be Batman. I mean, it is what it is. Has anyone given thought to why the USA is the highest consumer of drugs? Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the cage.
Yeah, it's the cage. That's the perfect answer. I've done many shows on this. There was an experiment done and a lot of commercials back in the 80s. We used to see the rat in the cage, and he would go up and hit the feeder bar that had cocaine in it. Right next to it, it had the food. And he would keep doing blow until his heart blew up and he fell on the floor of the cage. They walked away from that experiment and said, they're always going to do this. And then an intelligent guy said, I got a better idea. Let's change the cage. We'll still put the cocaine in there, still put the water in the food, but we'll put in there 5 attractive female rats. And then we'll put in a couple of boy rats that they can play with. And then we'll put a wheel that they can run on, and they've got cardboard they can shred, and they've got a little rope ladder thing they can crawl across. And the numbers changed dramatically. I changed my cage. I was sober, but I moved to South America, and I'm a very different person. It's amazing how nobody here has body issues. None. Because they don't get bombarded with images their entire life of girls who are anorexic. And I'm not, keep it real. I mean, I dated a girl, I've talked about this, that used to eat tissue paper because she was a model. I said, what are you doing? She said, it fills your stomach, but it doesn't give you calories. I said, you need to contact the doctor. You need psychiatric care. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. She smoked 2 packs of Marlboro Reds a day. And she said, I hate them, but it keeps you from eating. This is the society we created. And we created it because, keep it real, we allowed gay men to determine what fashion was going to be. You think gay men like women? This one shouldn't be a hard question to answer. So they found women that didn't have curves because they like looking at guys. We destroyed generations of girls with Barbie dolls who, if they were real, would have 52-inch inseams, right? Healthy, or 65-inch chests. Barbie was the ideal. Barbie doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Why do you think 9-year-old girls think maybe they're boys? Because every billboard's got a girl on there with fake breasts, augmented butt cheeks. She's doing this one, right? Beautiful. Let's celebrate the absolute worst of what we do. Tommy, hasn't the amount of expendable cash in this country get a lot of folks on the path? Here's the thing. That's a decent theory, especially because the drug thing started, years ago. But there's nobody in America anymore with disposable income. There just isn't. It's a very small majority. But yes, and again, when you have that much money and you can mark up, look, I'm not telling anybody anything they didn't know. I was addicted to heroin for a long time. And I could go into Mexico and I could get it for about, no joke, $2 or $3 a gram, right? Which was a lot nicer than 100. But then I'd have to get it back across the border, which could land you in prison for a really long time. So I would go down there, hang out and do it, right? But it was so cheap to buy. It was incredible. Once you take that product across an imaginary line, the value goes up so high that we created cartels. We created everything that we're trying to eliminate now, both sides. And why did we never win even one battle in the war on drugs? Because they don't care if we win the battle in the war on drugs. We have created a bureaucracy that is so large that they will admit to you that the war on drugs is not winnable, but it's fundable like a big dog, right? And now it is the second largest budget in the United States after the military. The number of people that work for that, the Drug Enforcement Agency, right? All of the vice squads across the country, the street enforcement teams, the drug interdiction teams, the kickers, the door kickers, right? The jump boys, guys that show up in cop cars, jump out and attack people legally, but they call them jump boys. You take all of those people, no one wants to lose their fiefdom. No one wants to lose the $2 million, right, that they're getting per police department, or the 100 million that they're getting per city. And you know what? If they spend that 100 million, they'll get 115 million the next year. If they spend 99 million, they'll get 100 the next year. You think they're going to spend that money? If they have to set it on fire, they're going to spend that money. Every single budget in the United States, if they hit their budget, we increase it by 15% every year. Where do I get that deal? So I make $40,000. I become a teacher. I become whatever. And I make $40,000 a year. And they say to me, hey, if you blow the whole 40, we'll just give you a 15% bump next year. No, that only works in the government. And maybe that explains why we're almost $40 trillion in debt. And everyone's yelling, the Republicans want to shut down the government. Little critical thinking. Why do you think the Republicans are telling them no? I looked through the bill that the Democrats want. Put a 3 in the chat if you read that bill. Put a 2 in the chat if you haven't. No disrespect, folks. This is called critical thinking. I'll just pull out 1 or 2 things from it because literally, who was it? I think Kennedy, the guy, said, you need a spreadsheet to look at this. If you took each thing and stacked it, it would go floor to ceiling. But how about this one? During COVID-19, there's a demonetization. During COVID-19, a lot of people couldn't go to work. So we subsidize people's insurance. But usually, households that are making below 65 grand, maybe 75 grand, depending on number of kids, this and that. That's a great idea, right? It's humane. Since people couldn't work, we changed it during COVID to say up to $250,000 a year. If you're making $250,000 a year, we were still subsidizing your insurance. The Democrats want that to continue indefinitely. Doesn't need that. Indefinitely. They do not want that to ever end. Why? Put a 3 in the chat if you think people making $250,000 a year need help from the government to pay their insurance. I don't imagine I'm going to see a lot of 3s. Put a 2 in the chat if that pisses you off. That's one of the things that they're asking for. 1.5 trillion more dollars. 1.5 trillion more dollars. You can't imagine what $1 trillion is. Do a little research on it. It will terrify you. If you start counting backwards 1 second at a time, before you get to $1 trillion, you will pass Jesus on the cross. By seconds. If you stack $100 bills, it will go to the moon. $1 bills. $1 bills, stack them, it will go to the moon, $1 trillion. We need 1.5 trillion more dollars. And by the way, don't tell me how many people are going to get screwed, because I've lived through 10 of these. All of the government employees are going to get a check for every single day they didn't get paid. It happens every single time, but every time, both sides, there are 2 reasons that shutdowns happen. If you don't understand this, then you need to start with the critical thinking thing. There are 2 reasons. One is fiscal, right? They can't agree on the bill. The money is too much or it's too little. The other is political. So the Dems are saying the Republicans want to shut this down so that people can't eat, and then the employees who protect us and aren't going to get paid, same things every time, right? And then the other side goes the opposite route and says, these commie pinko bastards are trying to do this, this, and this. Both sides are lying, but the fiscal problem is real, right? The fiscal problem is real. If the only thing in that bill that they were trying to extend was subsidizing $250,000 a year income earners to pay for their insurance, that's enough to go pull the plug. It's just downright stupid. It's your kids' money. It's your grandkids' money. And you hear every American out there going, just get it reopened. Yeah, why not? What's 1.5 more trillion if you're 39 trillion in the hole? How about some critical thinking? How long before a president gets in office and goes, we're going to go under my administration. Our only hope is World War III. You may not believe this. World wars are incredible for economies. Incredible. They put everybody to work. Rosie the Riveter, remember her? Women that had never been working were inside of factories putting rivets in planes. We were cranking out bombers once every 12 minutes at the height of the war. You have any idea what that did? Ask Boeing what that did. It creates unbelievable wealth, right? And it's going to happen. You know why? Because they'll put it into an AI model, and the AI model doesn't care how many people die. It's just going to do critical thinking for them. And it's going to take a look at the entire situation and go, So let me get this straight. You're $40 trillion in debt. And now the only money that you make just simply pays off the interest. And you owe this to China. You may have a slight advantage on China in military. This might be the time to go to World War III. Not only that, but what an opportunity to silence all of the people that hate you. The dollar has never been weaker. When this war is over, we're going to spin out a new currency, right? And maybe it'll be backed by the United States. The computer is going to recommend what gets done, and they're going to do it. Because computers don't have souls, right? Or minds. All they're doing is searching out other things that people have already said. And unfortunately, they're leaning in one direction so hard, it's incredible. The other day, I started talking about Portland. And I said in a question, how do they justify what's going on in Portland not being a freaking invasion? Right? For real. You've got people in there terrifying the citizens of the city. How could this be a bad thing? Right? How can the people on the left not see why sending in troops is not even a question of if it's good or bad? It's a necessity. Your job is to provide common defense, whether that's Russia coming at you or Antifa, right? Peaceful protest. It's ridiculous. So it blocked it. AI removed it and said it was a hateful question. So I asked it and I reworded it and it said, that's a hateful question. I am suspending my cursing ban because this is actually what I said. So I said, why is it that those dirty sons of bitch Republicans are sending people in there to terrorize a city when we have a law like posse comitatus, where we're not supposed to have soldiers or anybody else going into American cities? Now, admittedly, that's not true, right? Because this is the National Guard. It's not the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. But they're allowed to go into cities. In fact, they didn't delete it. So I said to AI, why did that comment not get deleted? I cursed in that comment. I called hateful things to the right. Why didn't that get deleted? And AI came back and said, that's a really interesting question. I would imagine it's because my designers have sent me in one direction. Didn't even BS me. And it said, well, and this is one of the problems with models like this. Here's the terrifying thing. Those AI models are what critical thinkers are using to make their decisions. The rest of the country, right? If you're under the age of 30, you have a 6 out of 10 chance that you get all of your news from TikTok, which is run by ByteDance, which is a wholly owned subsidiary for all intent and purpose of the Chinese Communist Party. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Have you seen some of the challenges that TikTok did that kills people and hurts people and paralyzes people? These are challenges. Chewing on Tide Pods. Yeah, they're looking out for our kids. They have the exact same program in China, and it teaches calculus and public speaking and things that the kid can actually use. But guess what? Do you know who's looking to buy it? Ellison wants to take it over in the U.S. And you remember me saying to you, you wait until you see the populists that come in. You think Trump is a populist president? Hell no. Wait until you get a populist president who runs not on, hey, we're going to shut down the border. He's going to do what Hitler did. That's what a populist president is. They call Trump a fascist. The guy coming after Trump might not be the next election, might even be the one after it. Because what's going to happen is this much of the country is going to continue to piss off this much of the country. We got 5, 10 people that want to compete in women's sports that are famous enough that we know about them, right? Like the guy that wanted to swim. I can't remember that guy's name. Big dude. He was a swimmer, not particularly gifted, and decided he would be a woman and kicked the crap out of his entire competition. right? This is a very small segment of the society. Even if you ask AI, they're going to tell you that people who do this is somewhere around 1 to 2%. I got to change how I speak for 1 to 2% of the population.
You're thinking of Leah Thomas.
Leah Thomas, thank you.
You're welcome.
Should we call him Leah?
Call Frank.
Frank Thomas. I'm kidding. I can't back that up. So Leah Thomas, right? This much of the population will influence the rest of them. How long before the population goes F you? And then a Hitler comes along. We say that could never happen again. You bet it can. Because it's not going to be them saying, we're going to put a border up. They're going to say, we're going to get rid of them for you. And by then, the country will take it. Not because they're bad people. Do you think the Germans were bad people? But they felt so disenfranchised and they had to use a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. Watch what happens if the dollar disappears as the world's currency. You don't think who's ever in office at that point's going to war? We've been building up that military forever, borrowing money from people we can't pay back. This sounds like how guys in prison get killed. Right? You borrow money from people that you can't pay back, you're in bad shape. I watched WNBA players get beat by middle school boys in basketball on YouTube. I believe that. And their best player, if I'm not mistaken, the one that ended up getting caught with a little bit of ganja or some hash oil or something and did a little time, allegedly probably has some chromosomes that yeah. When that woman got out of prison, she had a beard. It's an odd thing to happen if you're locked down for a period of time as a woman, right? But I'll call her a woman. I'm not a hater. She's a woman with a penis. I'm sorry. That's how I'm going from here on out. And if that sounds hateful to you, I'll let you live as a woman. You're not going to change my speech. I'm not going to say a man can give birth. And if you think a man can give birth, you should grab a tack hammer and whack yourself in the head with it. And if that's not Christ-like, there's a time to hate. There's a war on women. I happen to love a lot of women. My daughter's pretty important to me. I got nieces. I got a sister or two. And there's a war on women currently. They call them breeders. They call them chest feeders, right? Bleeders. Lovely, right? That's how to talk about women. And how do we celebrate them? Well, let's see. We'll put a guy on a Bud Light can. Sorry, that's a guy. Put him on a Bud Light can. Or, I don't know, maybe give Woman of the Year to a guy that has been a woman for 6 months. How many people in the United States have been doing incredible things as women for 50 years? But we got to kowtow to that 1%. Keep it up and watch what happens. Ain't going to be me doing it. I was smart enough to bail. I'm sorry. I'm curious to know how many people here are directly affected by the shutdown. Doesn't change my life at all. But I'm boring. It doesn't. Look, I have been in prison through either 2 or 3 lockdowns. And I would listen to inmates say, the guards aren't going to show up tomorrow. I said, of course they are. Why wouldn't they show up? Because they're not going to get paid. No, they're not going to get paid on Friday. And do you know what we usually do when we reopen it? We give them a kick because they had to go without cash for a few weeks. We give them a little extra. You know, why not? Put it as an earmark on the bottom of the bill because 1.5 trillion, by the time this puppy's passed, it's going to be way bigger than that. Watch. If you go and look at the number of things that they demanded, you will go, there's no freaking way this is true. But do you know why they did that? Because they want to blame the Republicans for shutting down the government. So if you say, here's a negotiation tactic, you know, and you go, I want this, this, and this, and I want the letter L stricken from the English language. Well, there's not much of a chance of that happening, right? But the Republicans have to go, we can't get rid of the letter L. They don't want us to keep the government open. Right? They want daycare centers to go without people there to take care of the kids. Miss me with this crap. Do a little critical thinking. And if you're not capable of it, I'm going to continue to do so. I'll try to curse less. I'll try to scream a little bit less. But you're just not going to get a kinder and a gentler Tommy. I'm sorry you're not. I'm trying. You will see turtle tunnels on a bill. You know what's really funny? That's probably not a joke. Everybody was talking about how bad Elon Musk was doing with the whole Doge thing. And do you know why you think that? Because that's what they wanted you to hear. Elon just hit the $500 billion mark. Did you hear that? He's worth $500 billion. Well on the way to being the first trillionaire. Anne from Massachusetts says, I think the people most affected by the shutdown are the ones least able to protect themselves, like the elderly, the handicapped, and the children. You know, yes and no. Yes and no. And that's the narrative, and it always has been. But I've said this before. I would like to hear one example of one of those people that was affected by this. Because let's say that you run a place that takes care of the elderly or kids, or you make deliveries to them. No one goes, we're not working, the pay's off. They're not. It's like a billionaire who doesn't have money on a Friday trying to front dope. Nobody goes, well, I'm not lending this guy money. Right? There's no chance of them. This is the United States of America. They spend $6 million a minute that they don't have. They don't spend $6 million a minute. They spend $6 million a minute they don't have. At least that was at its peak. So you think any of these companies are worried about not getting paid? They're going to go, no, we'll do this. Doge found that we give money to countries that don't exist. You aware of this? We literally have been giving money to a country that doesn't exist. There's only 196 of them. How hard could that possibly be to research? Critical thinking, right? Nah, just take their word for it. We're on Social Security, retirement, and disability. We still get our benefits. The only thing we can't do is go into a national park. That's a shutdown. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the food stamps doesn't stop. Medicare doesn't stop. It's never happened. It's never happened. They threaten it every time, and they say it so often that we start believing it. Another great one is, look, doesn't matter who's running for president. If this guy gets in, there will be no more condoms. I've been hearing that since 1986. I've never not been able to buy a condom if I needed one, nor have I been a fan of them. I'm sorry. Are you a fan? It's like trying to separate salt and pepper wearing boxing gloves. Anyway, they have been talking about getting rid of all birth control for so long. Guess what? You're getting BS'd. Try a little critical thinking. Every election that I have voted in my life, I have seen commercials where they literally talk about the elderly are going to starve. Right? They're going to shove, the elderly people into these. It's horrific. They used to run ads where someone would say, here's what I'm going to do if I'm elected. There's a great concept. Come out and tell us what you're going to do. Instead, we have ads now that go, hi, I'm Tommy Scoville, and that Johnny guy is a piece of crap. You don't want to vote for him. Do you realize that when he was 8 years old, he punched 3 guys on a playground? When he was 14, he got caught with 2 joints. This man's a criminal. Usually what they say isn't true. And you know what? You used to kind of have to be true. You say, well, they can't do that, Tommy. They get in trouble. Who's they? The politician? You can't donate more than a couple of $1,000s legally to any politician. No, those ads cost hundreds of millions of dollars a week to run. And they are donated by really rich folks on both sides of the equation, right? And they're called PACs, PACs, Political Action Committees. Now, if the Political Action Committee runs an ad that isn't real, right, then you can shut them down, but that's not going to hurt the candidate much. In fact, sometimes they'll go and do that just to get shut down, because by the time they do, the ad's been seen by how many people, right? They can run ads that say, this man was convicted of rape. No, he wasn't, but they just keep saying it. And if you say anything long enough, people will start believing it. Republicans will take away birth control. Democrats will take away guns. Something in every election cycle. Well, both of those in every election cycle. Every single time they say that. Now, yes, but this is my point, because we say it over and over again, right? And over again, enough and enough and enough. And at the last election, there were Democrats who said, if I get elected, we're going to do everything we can to remove every gun off of the soil in the United States. There don't need to be any. Now, that's never, ever been a thing, because they all get money from manufacturers and from, the NRA hooks up people on both sides of the equation. If you don't believe that, do some research. So do people who manufacture guns, because they got to spread it around, right? You don't know who's going to get elected, so you may as well have some friends just in case. We've pulled the string for a long time, regardless of who was in office. The rhetoric and the BS, we don't talk about issues. Ask yourself, do a little critical thinking, and find out how many laws they're going to pass in 2025. And when you hear the number, I want you to think to yourself, how is this possible? Make me understand how, Because if you said to me, Tommy, we're going to let you write the laws for the United States of America, I couldn't come up with 40. I promise you. But we've been writing laws since 1776. And do you know why? Because if you don't have a job. Politicians write laws. So now we write laws about how wide a window has to be, right? Inside of an elementary school. Mm-hmm. How high the urinals have to be off of the ground at a little league park. The things
the truth cold without getting your name out.
Right. The number of, when you go in to do, honestly, you go into an office to fill out papers for something and it takes you 4.5 hours. That's because there's 60 laws in there. You buy a house and you have to initial it in 85 places and you got to sign it on 16. It's because they wrote that many laws. In this country, you walk in to get your teeth done, you don't even fill out paperwork. And I'm not talking about going into a guy's garage. It looks like every other dentist you've ever been to in your life. Except they don't have the need to do that. And you know what else they don't have? They don't have insurance companies. The United States is the only place on earth where you walk into a doctor's office and you go, hey, I broke my leg. What's this going to cost? I don't know. I'm sorry, what? I don't know. We're going to have to wait until we do this and it's all said and done. Any other product on earth, you know how much it is. You decide to buy it or you don't, except medicine. And it has created a crap show, right? The best example of this is LASIK eye surgery, which was about 35 grand an eye when it first came out. How is it now you can get it done for $450 and you can finance it? Because the insurance companies didn't pay it. So when the insurance companies didn't pay it, doctors started popping up their own little clinics and realized that if 9 out of 10 people didn't pay them, they'd make more money not going through the insurance policies, right? They could send them to debt collection, do all kinds of stuff. They're better off. And when 10 of them open, you got to compete by dropping your price. Right? Milton Friedman, this is the free economy. This is free markets. This is how that works. Critical thinking, people. You want me to be kinder? Bring me great arguments. Bring me well thought out arguments, man. And you know something? I'll give you an example. Cindy G sent me an email, and it doesn't matter what we were disagreeing on, but she had an articulate way of putting out what her beliefs were. I don't have a problem disagreeing with somebody. I don't. But if you say to me, it's because the 1% and the yeah, you're going to go out there and scream without the knowledge to know what it is you're screaming about. I'm going to beat on you. I might do it nicely, but I'm going to work you. You know why? If we don't get critical thinking back in check in this country and in this world, we're going to be in really deep trouble. The prices should be the price. And you know what else? It should be on the wall like you're in a 7-Eleven. When you walk in, it should say X-rays, $90. When you get insurance companies out and companies compete, they say, you know what? The education process is so bad. Of course it is. There's no competition among schools. Teachers can go in there, get hideously low scores on all of the tests and never get fired because of unbelievable unions, right? Look what happens where charter schools pop up. When you have the ability to start negotiating anything, prices go down. But we don't do it. All right, people. If I get going, I might raise my voice. I'm going to do everything within my power to be a better representation of the things that I believe in. But there's a time to be born and there's a time to die and there's a time to not be kind. I was kind because I had a guy speaking something that I thought was more articulate than me, and he was certainly a better representation of Christ than me. And then the scumbags killed him. And it was one person. You go, yeah, it's the lunatic fringe. And hundreds of thousands of people celebrated it. And when Jimmy Kimmel acted like an asshole about it, people all over the country wore shirts, I am Jimmy Kimmel. You're going to equate a guy who died in front of his family, murdered, to some jackass that used to go around on the Man Show sniffing girls' behinds who didn't know he was behind them, right? We want to talk about those two people. Jimmy Kimmel's a lowlife. Charlie Kirk wasn't. I'm Tommy. I will see you on the next one. Between now and then, put a little critical thinking in your head. You'll thank me later.